Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, audience. This is a committee of the whole meeting tonight of Finance, Policy, and Justice. I would first ask that the clerk call the roll to establish the presence of a quorum.
Ammons. Anderson.
Here.
Beckett.
Here.
Benzel.
Here.
Betts.
Here.
Carter. Coert. Denitz. Gladney.
Present.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Jones. Knott.
Here.
Kurtz.
Here.
Langenheim.
Here.
McGinty.
Here.
Michaels.
Here.
Mosier. Nudo.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here.
Richards.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Sapp.
Here.
Schrader.
Here.
Smucker. Weibel.
Here.
Wysocki.
Here.
We do have a quorum. I would entertain a motion to approve the County Board resolution to meet as a committee of the whole.
Second.
Mr. James, second by Mr. Rosales. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. We have a series of minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting of January 12th, legislative budget hearings. I would entertain either seriatim or collectively.
I'll make a motion to approve them collectively.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Rosales. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. We have approval of agenda and addendum, and there's some items that need to be removed. 9G-1, 10B5, and 10B6. They relate to going into closed sessions, which will not be necessary on those items, and to taking action on one of the closed session items. With those items being removed, did you want to change the order?
Yeah. If it's okay with the committee, I would like to move item 11A up under Justice, so Mr. James can report out.
Is there any
earlier.
objection to that? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the agenda and addendum signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Nobody did.
I'll move.
Well, Rosales did it. Will James second? James seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. We have public participation. Tara McCauley.
Hi, I'm Tara McCauley. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the staff representative with AFSCME Council 31 that works with Local 900, which is Champaign County employees, the local union. We're here tonight because we are in contract negotiations with 4 of your bargaining units, the state's attorney, the general unit, which is Brookins and some other offices, the courthouse units, and we have been told that the county board's final offer on wages and insurance are that the employees would be paying more for health insurance in the over the course of the contract. The employees will be picking up increases in health insurance or half the increases, which our members feel is unaffordable. We did some figures. By the third year of the contract, our members could be paying over $100 a month for their insurance, and family insurance for the county employees is already out of reach for most people. The county doesn't pay for family coverage, so we feel that the county employees are paying enough for insurance as it is. And in terms of the wages, again, we're told the county board's final offer is a 1% raise over the course of a 3-year contract, more or less. There's the step issue, but I'm not going to get into all the little details. So we recognize we're in a tough economy. We all read the papers. We all feel it at home. However, we feel that is what the county board is putting on the table for the county employees. We feel is insulting and not enough of a wage increase. And we do not feel that county employees should be asked to be an ATM machine for the county. If the county if the finances are tight, don't come after the employees' benefits, find another place to balance the budget. So we came to the Finance Committee, because from the little bit I understand of procedure, you would need to make a proposal or a motion or something for the full board to come out of this committee. So that's why we are here tonight representing our members. Thanks.
John Farney.
Hi, I'm John Farney. I live here in Urbana, and I am speaking tonight as Vice President of AFSCME Local 900. I'd like to echo many of Tara's comments and really ask that the board work with us. We work for you every day. We come to work. A lot of times it's hard to come to work, especially after we've had so many cuts and layoffs here in the county. We are understaffed. If you compare Champaign County to any other county, we are working with the bare minimum to complete the statutory duties that we are charged with. And your employees come to work every day and they do a dang good job. And I really hope that you notice what your county employees do. There's no way that the county board, if you were asked to step into our jobs right now, you couldn't run the county, because we, as the employees here, have the training, the knowledge, and the ability to get these jobs done. And without hardworking county employees, you'd be in an even worse financial situation. So we ask that you please work with us. We're trying to work with you, and let's not call it quits. Let's keep working on this. Thanks.
Janae Harper.
My name is Janae Harper, and I work for the State's Attorney's Office. I would like to thank everyone for coming tonight and listening to the employees that make Champaign County run daily. I would like also for the board to look around and see the faces of the people that work for this county. We take pride in the work that we do each and every day. The employees are aware of the economic times. It is in the news and the headlines, and we face it each and every day. The county is known for its benefits. County benefits are what makes this an appealing place to work. We may be willing to work to a wage for you to secure our fellow coworkers' jobs. Insurance is not something we want to negotiate. Full insurance coverage is a must for this contract. The county board has been known to find money when it's necessary, and it is necessary. Please look harder and find money to take care of your county employees. Employees should not be asked for a wage freeze and to pay insurance. This would be going backwards for the employees. We are not here to negotiate backwards. Please look into the budget and find the funds, as you usually do, for other things, and put employees first rather than last. We as employees are proud to work for the county, and we do our jobs professionally. We like to look for the county board to show us the appreciation by continuing to cover single insurance 100%. Insurance is a benefit. We would like to keep this benefit. Thank you.
There being no other folks that have filled out the sheet, I declare public participation to be closed. There are some communications I guess I would like to announce to the board. Many of you already probably know this, that a celebration of life for Jerry Parr will be held this Sunday, the 14th, at the Alice Campbell Center at 3 o'clock. Those that want to attend can. There will be a service at 3, and then there will be a celebration and conversation and sharing of experiences afterwards. So folks are invited. There is quite a bit of parking. If you're really desperate for parking, you can do it on Oregon Street or even use my driveway, because I'm about 2 blocks from there. Any other communications or announcements from members of the board? Seeing none, I'm going to turn this over to Matt Gladney and the Chair of Finance, Mr. McGinty. No? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Tom. First, I would move the combined adoption of the following reports. Animal Control for December 2009, Emergency Management Association for December of 09 and January of 10, Head Start for September, October, November, December of 09 and January 10, Probation and Court Services for December of 09 and January 10, and Public Defender's Office November 09 and December of 09.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Mr. James.
I'm noticing that some of these reports are quite a ways behind monthly. Is there a reason for that?
That I do not know. It's just whenever they can get the reports completed and then submitted to us.
Okay. Well, is there any, I mean, I don't know what the proper procedure would be, but I would think that some of these departments, can they not be requested to get them in a little
Some of it
sooner?
is because you did not meet last month, so many of these reports might have been ready last month, but you didn't have a meeting.
Okay.
So this is everything cumulatively 2 months' worth of reports coming to you.
Mr. Weibel.
I can verify that I see Head Start reports at least 2 meetings every month. So I think it's just a matter they've not been brought to this board.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We have a couple of grant renewals for the Children's Advocacy Center. I move the renewal of the Violent Crime Victims Association grant.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Next, I move the approval of continued grant funding from the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority Agreement number 209216.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Under other business, I'd like to, that we have moved Mr. James's report on the Board of Health up to Justice. That's where I would like Mr. James to report out now, please. Thank you.
Well, as everybody recalls, back in November, December, there was talk of a possible split, and the Board of Health had come to the county board seeking guidance. Well, since that time, back in November, December, a consultant was hired that is going to come up with a report that would outline for the Board of Health, which I'm sure will be passed on to the county, possible alternatives for services, because there's been some discussion on the cost of services as they're now presented to us. So I just wanted to make this board aware, because that night I had heard some comments that people in the room were a little shocked to hear that we were having those sort of problems. So the consultant's working on his report. It'll be wrapping up here hopefully by April. His time with us is up in May. That's going to be part of the report. The other part will deal with budget issues facing us. Basically, everything right now seems to be going okay. We're just paying the bills and looking at other avenues. So I just wanted to make this board aware of what's going on and where we stand. And no, we did not hire a mediator to help us out in our meetings, because I think we can do that without having too much friction.
Thank you, Mr. James. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all right, thank you. Under Chair's report, the only thing I have to mention is the Citizens Advisory Committee on Jury Selection is having its next meeting this Friday, the 12th, I believe in the Jenny Putman meeting room at 5:30 here at the Brookins Center. Also, we have applied for a $50,000 grant from the Illinois Disciples Foundation. It's called a Justice for All grant, and if we get that, that would help that committee further its goals. We have not heard, as far as I know, we have not heard back on whether or not we'll get that grant, but if we do, I will certainly let the committee or the board know. And that is all I have for Justice, and then the items to go on consent should be items B1 and B2. And that's all for Justice. Thank you.
On to finance, the first two items I'd like to entertain is an omnibus motion. The first is budget amendment 100036 for $25,000 to reflect receipt, a federal grant to develop curriculum for statewide training aimed at simplifying the process of documenting GIS data. Second one is another amendment 00037 for $35,000 in appropriation and increased revenue of $33,500 to reflect receipt of additional fiscal year 2010 contracts for GIS services. Is there a motion for approval by Barbara? Is there a second by Pius? Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, budget amendment 1000026 for $24,888 to populate the line item which should have been included in the fiscal year 2010 budget, detailed on page 45 of your packet. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Stan, seconded by Carol. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Budget amendment 1000034 for $104 county engineer's car allowance. Is there a motion for approval? By Ralph. Seconded by Pius. Discussion. Pius, then Michael.
I'm actually not familiar with this. Is this his total car allowance for the year, or?
No, his annual car allowance is dependent upon a CPI factor that is not available when we prepare the budget. So almost every year it has to be adjusted a little bit to account for the calculation of the CPI.
Michael?
That was essentially my question.
Any others? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 5 is an amendment 1000039 for $174,056 to document the receipt of arbitration award for Autobahn litigation and subsequent expenses. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
By Stan, seconded by Lorraine. Discussion. Brad.
Deb, I know we ran out of money in the construction fund last year, and we had to pay some out of general corp for expenses we had with the nursing home. I'm wondering why this 174, a portion of that isn't going back into general corp instead of back into the construction fund.
Well, okay. We believed that the fund had run out of money last year when, in fact, there was $43,000 left, which we thought had been paid out and had not been paid out through advances. So you amended the construction budget last month by that $43,000. We still have some arbitration expenses to pay. At the end of the day, the idea behind this amendment would be, so far, General Corporate Fund has paid out right around $100,000. After all other arbitration expenses are paid, ultimately, the goal would be to repay the General Corporate Fund what it has paid out, and then determine at the end how much is still left, if any, in the construction fund.
Any other questions? Alan?
This amount is a result of the $250,000 we held out prior to the settlement that we didn't pay Autobahn. So then the judge required us to pay that $250,000, and this is what we netted. Is this how we came to the $174,000?
This is the net. The total award was $405,000 and change. Autobahn's original contract still had retainage of $250,400. The award, arbitration award, required us to pay that. We don't actually pay it. It's taken as a credit against the $405,000, and then Autobahn will pay us the difference plus interest.
Thank you.
Al?
Yeah, this is a large sum of money. Do we have any more detail on the subsequent expenses that they're talking about here? Can we get some numbers on that as to exactly what they're talking about? This is not just an amount of money that comes from just the arbitration. I'm assuming there's other expenses in here. Is that correct?
This money is coming in. There are still arbitration expenses to be paid, probably in the neighborhood of maybe $30,000. And then whatever is left over will go to repay General Corporate for what it paid for arbitration expenses. And after all of that has been done, then we would report back to the county board how much is left in the nursing home construction fund in terms of cash, and you could make a determination at that time of whether you want to leave it there for facility issues or if you want to move it somewhere else.
No, my question is...
Your question is specifically about specific arbitration bills. I don't have that information with me tonight.
That's what I meant. You don't have the breakdown on...
I have it. I just don't have it with me right now.
Stan?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Deb, but I thought any money left over we were going to put to a capital improvement fund to use on all buildings, if there was
We
any.
never anticipated having money left over in this fund, so I've never brought you a recommendation of what to do with money that might be left over in this fund. That's certainly an option that can be looked at when we know we're done with distributing
Right, with all the-
everything.
and I agree. That was just my understanding, but you're right. It wasn't
Yeah.
out of the fund per se.
Right.
Other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, Budget Amendment 100035 for $16,998 to reappropriate funds for the LRMP portion of the county planning contract to fiscal year 2010 that were not spent by the end of '09. Motion by Carol for approval, seconded by Barbara. Discussion. Diane.
I just have a question. When there are excess funds left over, is that something that has to be spent? Could it not go back into the pot and be taken care of that way? I mean, just to spend what you have because you've got X amount doesn't mean that.
This money had previously been approved for this project and for this expenditure.
Right, but it didn't come up to this dollar amount, so the excess dollar amount.
No, the total project will come to this dollar amount.
okay.
The project was delayed last year for various reasons, so they didn't get the project completed, which was anticipated to occur last year. The project is ongoing even right now, and so this is to complete the payment for the project that was basically delayed. It does not exceed the original project amount that was approved by the board. It simply carries it over into this fiscal year when it was anticipated to have been completed last fiscal year.
Okay, then maybe I misunderstood the letter here, because it looked to me like it was to just kind of hold on to, instead of losing the unexpended portion due to project schedule issues. So this will be used for that same project?
It will be used for the LRMP portion of the county planning project, yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Item number 7, Budget Amendment 100031 for $13,123 to budget the required appropriation for Internet access services for the county's network with the Illinois Century Network for 2010. Is there a motion for approval? By Pius, seconded by Barbara. Discussion. Michael.
If this is required, why wasn't it in the budget?
We have never paid the Illinois Century Network for our internet access services, and it was only in about January of this year when they did an internal audit that they determined that we would no longer be able to be afforded free internet access. It was previously provided to us because we have an educational component, and the internet was brought into the county through the Juvenile Detention Center, where we provide educational services. And we have had free internet access for at least a decade as a result of that service. But ICN, like everyone else, is auditing their business practices, and in that audit determined that Champaign County government overall doesn't really qualify for that educational waiver, and determined that we now need to pay for our internet access. I had no way of knowing that when the budget was prepared.
Is this for the East Campus, or is this all
This
county
is for the
activities?
county, for our entire network.
Other questions? Stan?
Will this be an ongoing contract, or will it be renewed every year at a different cost, or do you have any thought on that?
I'm sure this is fairly inexpensive, and this is provided through the state. CMS is the provider of the Illinois Century Network. But I'm not going to tell you that this cost will never go up.
Other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 8 is budget amendment is 100032 for $10,110 to pay for a wireless radio kit, material and labor to the Guild building. Is there a motion for approval? Moved. By Steve, seconded by Pius. Discussion. Michael?
Can we have more explanation on this, if possible?
This is related to the coroner's office move to the Gill building, and we originally believed that we would be able to set up their connectivity to the county network through a wireless, through a laser kit that we had basically been provided at really almost no cost from Carl when they were no longer using it on the Gill building. And going into their move, we believed that was going to work. Ultimately, after a lot of trial and error and a lot of effort, both by our physical plan, our IT department, and Champaign Telephone, who was providing us with assistance in getting this all set up, that ultimately did not end up working, and we had to go to a wireless connection. And this is the additional cost for enabling the coroner's office to have adequate connectivity to the county's network from the Gill building. We don't have fiber to that building. It's one of the only buildings where we don't have fiber connectivity, and it was difficult to achieve the appropriate operation in terms of speed of access to the network and how it operates. And this was just an unanticipated expense related to that move.
Are there other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We're up to the addendum. Item number 9, an amendment 1010040 for $5,004 to correct salary administration budget entry error in preparation of a fiscal year 2010 personnel budget. Is there a motion for approval? So moved. By John, seconded by Sam. I will note and ask for a friendly, if this is friendly, Deb informed me before the meeting that number, the 5004, should be 5884. If you both find that friendly, we can discuss that item. Okay, thank you. Discussion. Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry, Carol?
I would just ask to get some clarification on what this error was here.
If you will recall, when we went through the budget preparation process last summer, we asked departments initially to cut 6% from their budgets. And 6% did not end up being enough, and so we had to go back and cut some more. And one of the positions that was eliminated was a position that had already been partially cut. So this position, $5,884, was cut from the salary for a clerk's position in the Supervisor of Assessments office in the summer. And that was part of their 6% cuts. Ultimately, because of attrition, the position is considered to be vacant for the entire year. And when we made that decision, we cut the full salary, forgetting that part of that salary had already been cut. So we double cut one position essentially by this amount.
Other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Before I get to Deb's report with the county administrator, again, I'm going to send around the amendments and transfers. It looks like the slots are still there for the Finance Committee, so if you could sign as Finance Committee, I would appreciate that. And we'll go on to the administrator's report. Deb.
The handouts for the administrator's report are with the goldenrod cover sheet that was at your desk this evening. The first being the General Corporate Fund revenue projection report for expenditure projection report for fiscal 2010. Looking at the revenue side, you will see that we are anticipating a decline in the 1 cent sales tax over what had originally been projected, so that it would only potentially come in at 86%. The quarter-cent sales tax looks to be fairly solid, projecting at 99%, which is fairly good. The use tax looks like it's going to see a substantial decline yet this year. And income tax is listed as coming in at 97% with a $91,000 decline. However, I'm sure most of you saw the report from IAC-BMC yesterday, and this has to be of extreme concern to us. This anticipates that we would actually get the 12 months of income tax revenue that we are entitled to this year, which, if you remember last year, we only received 10 months. If they cut what they submit to us from 10% to 7%, we will have to seriously look at that because that would be a $795,000 shortfall in our fiscal 2010 budget. So if any of you are talking to any state legislators, I would encourage you strongly to encourage them to not cut resources that are already not coming to us in the manner in which they should. Looking down further on the report, you will see that to the general government, which is fees, looks like it will come in about $190,000 short. Later in my report, we'll look at the Harris & Harris report. We did project 12 months of revenue from the collections through Harris & Harris and actually have only just received the first month in February. So that means likely only to be 10 months of collections. So that shortfall really represents the difference there. Also, this time of year, fees generally do look a little more bleak than they end up being. So that one could still rebound later in the year. The bottom line at this point is, without the income tax change that we just talked about, the current revenue looks like it would come in at 98%, which is about $686,000 short of the revenue budget. The next page, which is the expenditure report, also indicates that in most areas we look like we are underspending the budget. Again, it's early. This is only the end of the first quarter, but I do know that all the department heads and officials are being very cautious. A couple of areas, I think we're seeing improvement in postage because there is a real move to doing more online, and so I think we are seeing some cutbacks in what mailings have to be, and that could be helpful. Gas and electric service, we are definitely doing well, and with the contracts that we've just negotiated, should continue to do well because we'll be paying lower rates. So there, we will hopefully see savings in those areas in expenditures for this year, which puts us currently at expenditures coming in at about 95% with $540,000 less than budgeted. And if you look at the summary, you'll see that at this point in time, the projection is that we would have a deficit year of about $196,000, just about $200,000, which again, it's very early, but that's definitely something we need to watch. That level of deficit would leave us with a 4% fund balance at the end of the year, and clearly that's only 33% of what our fund balance goal is for cash flow for the general corporate fund, and something that would be of concern.
Questions for Deb? Stan.
I noticed under gasoline and oil, and we've all been seeing this too, that the prices are shooting back up there. So do you think your budget may be affected in that line item also?
It could be. I mean, it could get worse, I suppose.
Other questions? Entertain a motion to accept that file and place it in.
So moved.
By Barbara, seconded by Alan. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next is just the general corporate fund budget change report from the original budget to where we are today. And you can see that we've added $201,199 in expenditure and about $149,500 in revenue, which gives the current budget as it appears on paper. And the ones that are highlighted or appear with the gray background, those are attributable to one-time expenses, not necessarily ongoing expenses.
Questions? Motion to accept and place on file?
So moved.
By Stan, seconded by Barbara. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next report is the Harris & Harris report, which is new. And this does show what is happening with the collections through the criminal justice system, turning over older obligations and debts to Harris & Harris for collection. The first page on page 5 shows what general corporate has received as a result of these collections. You see there was nothing in December, January about $1,800, but February $21,272. And at that monthly rate, it's close to matching what we projected General Corp would achieve in terms of revenue from this initiative. And again, they are still gearing up. They are still working through some difficulties in the early stages of those collections.
Bias?
Deb, did we include this as part of the budget for this year?
We included $225,000 as part of the budget. We anticipate that this should generate much more than that, but only probably for about 2 years. So we anticipate 225 as a number that should be sustainable over a 5 or 6 year period. So we built that into the operating budget. Anything above and beyond that should be treated as one-time revenue. It would be my recommendation to be treated as one-time revenue, probably most likely to replenish the fund balance for the general corporate fund.
Stan?
And I've probably heard this, but what is actually out there that's owed the county in a round number?
$40 million.
Wow.
Actually, that's the total. 40% of that is owed the county. If you look on the next page, you'll see the agency summary. So what general corporate has received is not the total amount that has been collected. The agency summary shows what has been distributed to the various agencies for the fines that were outstanding and owed to those agencies. And you can see clearly the City of Champaign, State Police, Village of Rantoul, and City of Urbana are the largest recipients, are receiving the largest values from those. So
Alan?
it's a benefit to those entities as well that we are doing this, clearly.
On behalf of Rantoul, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alan?
Refresh my memory on current fees and fines. This isn't going through Harris.
This has nothing,
right.
these are old.
Right. These are old.
Right.
So are we tracking the effectiveness and the efficiency of current collection of fees and fines so we don't get into this morass again? In other words, I mean, are we not duplicating problems in the future and having it go over to Harris? I mean, do we have systems in place that we talked about a little bit to...
I believe some of these go back as long as 10 years. I think we picked a cutoff of about then. In the last 3 years, we've had a system in place in the state's attorney's office where there has been an initiative to proactively go after fees and fines as they are not collected. I can't answer your question entirely because it involves the probation department, the courts, the circuit clerk, the state's attorney.
All right. Could we get something to the effect of knowing the effectiveness so that we, whatever action we have to take in order to make sure that the current collection doesn't get to Harris, is what I'm getting at. Because I know it doesn't cost us anything, but we're much better off trying to collect fines right away. And certainly there's things that we can do, like reporting to the credit bureaus if we're doing it right, and that has direct effectiveness on them responding. So, I got a friendly fire here.
Steve?
I'm afraid you don't understand. I'm just afraid you don't understand. We don't tell the courts how to collect their money. When they haven't collected their money, then they turn and look at us and say, can you help us? But we don't. We're not the courts. We're not the judges. We're not the state's attorney. We're not the circuit clerk. Those are obviously elected in much different ways than us, and we don't get to tell them how to do their business. You know, it's just we sit back here and we see this huge debt that is owed to us, and working with the state's attorney, we took steps. Harris and Harris didn't come from us; it came from the state's attorney.
I understand. There should be some collaborative efforts to work with them.
And I believe there have been. I believe that the judiciary is stepping up deadlines for paying fees and fines within a sentence period. And I think the state, with the state's attorney's program, I think court services, that the whole group is working together to make sure that, you know, these things are addressed as well as they can. I don't think you will ever eliminate having unpaid fees and fines out there. I think likely that using Harris & Harris is a long-term solution for those who ultimately don't pay.
Diane?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up. I don't know if you're aware of this, maybe it's because I'm a lawyer, because those of us who are lawyers and who've had clients that are in this mix are hearing from our old clients about how unbelievably expensive it is to have Harris & Harris come after them. And there have been mistakes where people who didn't owe money are receiving dunning letters and are being asked to pay huge, amounts of funds. So I don't want you to think that this is some sort of smooth flow, no problem sort of thing, because it's not. It's very complicated. But we as county board members may very well be asked, and we really don't have any say in it. We have no say in the process, other than our normal, wonderful persuasion that we have with the state's attorney's office. So,
Diane.
This might be a little bit different, but how does all this relate with page 52 in our booklets tonight? Because I see something that says agency summary, $86 in January and $79 in January for general corporate. I don't understand how that relates with the packet we have here.
That was last month, and it just got included in your packet because, again, you did not meet on February 9th.
Right,
and so reports that were presented for last month, I would encourage you to ignore it because the information you have tonight is up to date.
Well, it just struck me that we're talking $21,000 versus 86 and 79, and that's where I was maybe a little bit confused.
But you will see that those were total payments just for the city of Champaign and city of Urbana.
Okay.
I mean, and that was an early report. They've fine-tuned the reporting. What you have tonight is more.
21 is more like, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Pius?
Deb, I'm looking at the bottom.
Could I just explain the next report
sorry,
before we, the final report is documenting all the monies to date that have been collected. So you've seen a report of what's been collected on behalf of the General Corporate Fund. You've seen a report of the fees that have been collected and distributed to the agencies for outstanding fines that were owed to them. This final report consolidates everything that's been collected into one report.
Pius.
And my question has to do with that report on the first page, late fees. Are those prorated and distributed to different entities, or what happens to those?
No, they are not. There's a statutory provision for those late fees. The clerk of the court may add up to 15% of unpaid fees that remain unpaid after 90 days, which all of these cases are older than 90 days. And the additional delinquency amounts collected under this section shall be deposited in the Circuit Court Clerk Operation and Administrative Fund to be used to defray administrative costs incurred by the Circuit Clerk in performing the duties required to collect and disperse funds. So that's what has been collected to date in those late fees. And at this point in time, the Circuit Clerk is leaving those fees in her distribution fund.
Other questions on this issue? Entertain a motion to accept and place this report on file, please.
So moved.
By Stan, seconded by Geraldo. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is item C. It's State's Attorney Office item, renewal of Violent Crime Victims Assistant Grant. Is there a motion for approval? By Barbara, is there a second? By Matt. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. The nursing home financial report from March 3rd was a separate attachment, and are there any questions about that? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to accept and place that report on file as well. Motion by Brad, seconded by Barbara. Questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Treasurer's report, Dan.
If you want to see a smooth collection operation, I'm just kidding. Ours can get very ugly as well. I've had the opportunity of most every month for the last 12 years to talk to the Finance Committee, so I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to present my financial report to you. I just want to talk about, I did distribute my report, so each of you should have one at your desk. And I'm going to speak basically about just the last 2 pages. The next to last page is General Corporate Fund borrowing. And I've gone back to the revenue year 2001, page 2002, and through the current year. And you can see that there are some years that we didn't borrow anything at all to continue to keep General Corp cash flow going. And when we did borrow, most of that time it was borrowing that occurred in March, April, or May. Now, when we get down to 2008, all of a sudden we start borrowing a lot sooner, and to the tune of $3.3 million for last year. And you can see in 2009, we just reauthorized the borrowing from public safety from the year before for the $1,590,000. And then just this February, we had another $500,000 that came from probation and recording. So to date, to keep general corp's cash flow appropriate, we've already borrowed $2.1 million. And I think that I have enough borrowing authority to maybe make this until we get real estate money at the end of May. I've still got $500,000 worth of authority out of both probation and record together. And we also have, we collect real estate taxes in advance for those taxpayers that can't wait to pay in December. We have about $2.3 million of that, so we've got some funds available to us, but it's very tight. And when I talk about tight, we can go to the next page, and I'll show you a chart that I do that's cash flow projection. It shows, starting with December, of course, is where our year begins. Of course, December, January, and February, the years are done, or those months are completed. And in March, the numbers are to date, that's through today, March the 9th, and it shows, if we go down a little bit, you can see the general corporate, just the general corporate fund balance right there in cash is only $266,000. The thing to be concerned about there is that if you look down to the third line of payroll, each month we need $1,550,000 to make payroll. So $266,000 doesn't help us very much. But we do have a fund balance in Fund 105, which is our capital asset account, for $1,263,000, and that's really what's helped us, that and the public safety sales tax. So you can see every month we're putting out $1,500,000 in payroll. And our payables are about $1,200,000 each month, $200,000 I should say. And then our monthly revenues average is about $2.3 million. So you can see that this month, if everything came in as we expected it to come in, especially on time, we would end the month with a positive balance of about $622,000. And then looking forward to April, we're down to $198,000. And that's really the dilemma of cash flow. That's if everything worked out perfectly. We got everything that we were expecting to get, and we got it on time. So when you look at both the previous report and this report, timing is very much as important as the amount is that you're looking at. For me, the $622,000 tells me I'm not going to make it through the end of the month without borrowing some more. And certainly in April, we'd be in the same position. Now, what changes in May? The bottom says real estate tax distribution. We should be getting about $1,700,000. Well, that represents about 23% of what the total collections will be. For general corporate, it's just a little under $8 million that we're going to get in real estate taxes this year. So this is what I work on every day. I post every deposit that comes in. I post every check that goes out. And I watch this religiously because I don't want to get caught short. I know what payroll is going to be. I have no clue what accounts payable is going to be. It could be $50,000. It could be $300,000. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about cash flow. Double-diluted income tax, this will be my last point. Income tax is at the present time 5 months behind. The state's 5 months behind. Last time we got income tax from the state was in January for what we should have received last October 2009. So those 5 months represent just, if we got exactly what we would have gotten the past last year, same months, a little bit over $1 million. You can imagine what $1 million would do for our cash flow. So we're fighting the good fight, and I think we're doing a good job keeping on top of it. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for Dan? John.
Dan, on the June line, you snuck in there between the payroll and account payable debt service. Could you
I always expound
on that, please.
Yeah, it's the construction on the nursing home construction, and this is interest. And every 6 months we make a debt service payment. This represents interest. What I go ahead and do, I know that the board has asked the nursing home to make these payments, but I don't take that for face value. I assume that if it doesn't happen, I want to plan for it myself. So that's what the $87,000 is. The regular debt service at the end of the year will be around $300,000.
That's why I wondered about that number.
Total, yeah, I'm sorry, the total.
Total, right.
Yeah.
That's why I wondered about that $87,000.
Right. Just planning for it.
Stan?
Basically, he answered that question. That I was going to follow up on that, but is that the money owed back to the corporate fund that they borrowed?
No.
No?
But at the present time, what they still owe us is about $322,000. And that's also in my report. If you look on, I'm sorry, I don't have my pages numbered, but fifth or sixth page, and 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth page shows any negative fund balances at the end of the month for February. At the bottom, it shows what the nursing home's cash balance is at the end of the month for February, with outstanding loans of $333,000 that has not been paid back or forgiven, showing that they actually have about a $610,000 balance. Then you'll see this the Finance Committee has seen this for several years, but this is something that you'll see on a monthly basis as well.
Thank you.
Other questions for Dan? Motion to accept and place the report on file by Brad, seconded by Geraldo. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Next up is Auditor's Report. Tony.
The purchases, not filing the purchasing policy report, has been placed on your desks. Everything on there, with one exception, is a 2009 expenditure that was paid in 2010. The one exception was a credit card purchase where we didn't get receipts. And, that's sort of the problem of having a credit card policy, but that's what we have. And then I also have in your agenda the monthly reports for December, January, and February. And I would appreciate a motion to accept and place those on file.
I'll move. Motion by Geraldo, seconded by Pius. Questions for Tony or discussion on the monthly report? Diane.
Sorry. Multiple bills dated October through November for the nursing home, $283,000. Can you kind of give me the big chunk of that, what that is? That's a large number to just say.
Sure. And what those are there are a lot of expenditures from the nursing home that were for services provided last year that they're just this year getting to pay. And so it would be pages, this report would be pages and pages and pages if we listed them all individually.
So what you're saying is this is service providers we owed $283,000 to?
Yeah.
Other questions for Tony? All in favor of placing the report on file, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
There is no chair's report, and the items for consent are all of the amendments and transfers except for item number 6. Also, C1 under State's Attorney, and I believe that that's it. Pius?
Brendan, on the Deb's report here, there's Exhibit B on other post-employment. Oh.
Anything else for finance? Thank you very much.
Well, we'll begin policy. We've got about 3 minutes. Maybe we can get something done before we begin the public session. Mr. Chairman, we have some appointments and reappointments this evening for the Board of Review to fill the term left vacant by the resignation of Dan Stebbins. Your choice.
My choice is Wayne Williams for term from March 19th to May 31st, 2010.
Move approval.
Is there a second? Seconded by Harold Lamons. Discussion? Yes.
We couldn't hear what
This
Pius
is
said.
the nomination of Wayne Williams to fill the vacancy left by Dan Stebbins. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Lincoln Exhibits Committee for a term from March 19, 2010 to February 28, 2013. Mr. Chairman.
Heather Tucker is my nomination.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Wysocki.
What about Laura Sandifer?
What about her?
Is she on this appointment?
No. You just voted.
It's just.
She's still.
We are on the Lincoln Exhibits Committee vote. He nominated Wayne Williams and it passed unanimously. We're on Lincoln Exhibits and your selection, Mr. Chairman, is?
Ms. Tucker.
Ms. Tucker. Is there a second? Second by Wysocki. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. The Liquor Advisory Commission. Mr. Chairman.
3 people for 3 positions. Dim Dubnicek, Lee Roberts, Renee Strawbridge from April 1st, 2010 to March 31st, 2013.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Stan James. Discussion. Yes, Ms. Michaels.
I know that they have in here, I'm sorry to be a pest tonight, guys. I know he
That's
has
your
in here
job.
to
We're
see.
supposed to ask questions.
To see the prior one, and I noticed that it's 3 years old. Is there something that says that if it's more than a year or 2 old, that we really should have an updated application versus going back on something that's 3 years old? Just an idea.
That's the chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, these are the forms they sent in. I guess nothing's changed, although I will try to, in the future, I will try to ask that they update their forms.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. I believe it is 7 o'clock, or pretty close.
Well, I'd like to go to the bathroom, so.
Okay, we'll recess for about 3 minutes. We'll go to the administrator's report.
The vacant positions listing is in your packet for your information. The next item on the agenda is a request for amendment to ordinance number 652, establishing the Information Technology Resources Policy and Procedures, which governs the use of the internet by our employees.
I would entertain a motion. Moved by Mr. Weibel, seconded by Mr. Rosales. Discussion. 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 All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you, Tom.
The next item is really a county board issue, but we sent it out. It's a proposal to amend County Board Rules Section 12E, which establishes the public participation guidelines for committee of the whole meetings.
It would just simply mirror the system that we have for the full board meeting, since we're acting with all 27 of us. There's a motion by Mr. Langen.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Beckett. Mr. Beckett, would you like to speak to it?
I'll just say that the idea behind this was to make public participation at committee of the whole meetings consistent with public participation at full county board meetings, since we're all here. And the concern that I have is that there's only so many hours in the evening that we can come to our attention. I will say that Mr. Nudo tonight handed me information from the village of Rantoul and what they put on their speaker's card, and they have as a rule, if you don't mind, I'll just refer to these. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes to address the board. The village clerk shall keep time for all speakers. The clerk shall provide all speakers with a 30-second warning by displaying a yellow card, and shall notify all speakers of the conclusion of their allotted time by displaying a red card, like a soccer game. Speakers shall act and speak with decorum and conform to conventional social manners in speech, writing, dress, and behavior. Speaker must be concise and not repetitive of himself or herself or other speakers. And perhaps those are things that we might consider with regard to this rule at some point in the future, particularly the last one. I think one of the things that concerns some of us is that we have repetitive speakers. Sometimes we have husbands and wives who come up, for example, and they're certainly entitled to do that, but I'm not sure what it accomplishes to have them both say the same thing from the same perspective. But anyway, the general nature behind this proposal was to have consistency in our public participation. I would note that at the last meeting that we had that was chaired by Ms. Wysocki, she imposed the 5-minute rule. I think that's a chair's prerogative, but that certainly makes this consistent.
James.
On that adoption, on item number 4, it says no board member shall be permitted to address the board. What if there's suspension? Because I know there's been times in the past when we've had board members address the full board if it's an issue that they know something about or it affects them and they want to do it as a person from the public. Can we suspend the rules to do so? The way that reads, it's saying no.
You can always suspend.
That is your current rule. The only change that you're approving is what's in bold, italics, and underlined. The rest of that is the current rule, and you do vote to suspend the rules.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was clear. Thank you.
Mr. Langenheim.
I think the best thing that can be said in favor of this is that our experience with public input has not been unpleasant, and rigidity in enforcing those rules has not been a pattern. So let's not try to set very hard and fast, narrow rules.
Yes.
Well, I referee football, not soccer, but I would be more than happy to come armed with flags to throw at the appropriate times.
Mr. O'Connor.
I wanted to ask Deb if we still have Barker's stoplight, or did we throw that away?
It's right there.
That ought to do it.
Further discussion. Further discussion. Further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries.
The final item is a request for your approval of an amendment to the consultant services agreement with Milliman Incorporated for the other post-employment benefit retiree health insurance evaluation. And I would ask you to use the document that's at your desk with the goldenrod copy. There's one slight change from what was in your packet, which is highlighted in yellow on the third page, page 11 of those attachments.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Amons. Discussion? Discussion? Mr. James.
I just had one question, and I'm sure Deb will clear it up for me, but on, I guess, page 10 now, down where it says cost, they're using the cost of that study from 2009. What am I missing here, or what's...
That is the cost of this current study that you would be approving, which is for the year that ended December 1st, 2009. This is an actuarial analysis that's done, and the first year is the year that ended December 1st, 2009. And the cost is exactly the same as what you paid 2 years ago when they did this in the first term of this contract. The only increase is the $800, which is attributable to the highlighted portion, which was requested by the auditor's office. Now that they have actually worked through this OPEB valuation for one audit, they're requesting that additional work be added.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Treasurer.
I sent a letter out, seemed like a couple of months ago. I'm not sure what the date of it was. Let's see here, yeah, January 26th. Had a retirement in my office effective November 30. That position's been held open for 3 months. Just recently hired somebody for that position. During the time when the retirement occurred, my staff came to me and suggested some changes to the structure of our account clerk position, which would result in one account clerk position having more responsibility. I'm asking this committee to give me the approval to go to the job content evaluation committee to review that, and I can guarantee I'll respect whatever way they look at it. If they say it's not worth changing, I'll be glad to take that advice.
Move approval.
Second.
Who is the second?
You moved.
Okay. Got it? Okay. Discussion. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
The county clerk monthly fees report, we need a motion to receive and place on file.
So moved.
Mr. James and Mr. Kurtz. Discussion. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Under other business, the first item is a resolution establishing Champaign County Redistricting Commission for election redistricting based on the 2010 United States Census. We need a motion before we can have discussion. Discussion. Mr. Kurtz?
Now can I speak on the portion? Thank you.
You can speak on the motion that's on the floor.
Thank you. As Mr. Nuno said, there is a interrelationship between size of the board and redistricting, reapportionment. And I've taken a really close look at the resolution as it stands right now, and I'm going to make a few comments, maybe request some changes and some additions. I'd like to go directly to Section 4 at the at-large members of that resolution. And it's the, I feel there are just, for just detail, to add to the group urban citizens and students, which are not noted in Section 4. I'd like to have that added in because all my constituents are urban, and I would like them to have that kind of representation as well. Also, I'd like to have added in here somewhere that the chair shall avoid appointing persons from groups and organizations that actively lobby the county board. I think that's extremely important to try and get as much unbiased opinion as we certainly can. And people who lobby the board certainly have private and personal agendas, and something like that should be added to this resolution. Section 8, time of appointment and vacancy. I have to say that I believe that the new 2010 board has the authority and the responsibility to pick the commission, and we should not mandate to them the process. They have the authority and the responsibility to handle the reapportionment once it comes to them. So under Section 8, I would like to add or change, it should be changed to December of 2010 or later, so that the new board, which has the authority and the responsibility, will pick the commission and won't have to go about doing it all over again when they're sworn in. Under Section 11B and C, in deviation, I personally believe that the deviation percentage variance should be no more than 50 citizens. The map can be drawn with much less deviation than is stated in Section 11C. Also, we have no assurance that 9 districts will be the ultimate goal of the new board. And we spoke about that tonight, changing the districts, changing the board size. So that will change completely if we go to single-member districts. Under Section 13F, now this one I think is the most serious failure of this resolution, is the fact that if 13F is enacted and we cannot come to a decision on the map, and we fail to adopt and file an apportionment plan, which is possibly, could very well happen, it will strip the county board, the state law will strip the county board of the ability to draw the map. If the status political quo remains, the map, under the state's attorney's opinion and state law, will be drawn by the apportionment committee consisting of the county clerk, the state's attorney, the attorney general, and the chairs of each political party. The map would then be drawn by 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Thank you very much. We'll also lose control over what should be the new board's responsibility. Now, I'd like to make reference to a letter that came from the state's attorney to some questions that we posed to them, just to give you an idea of some of the situation that we put ourselves into here. Question. This is the board member's question forwarded by the board chairman to the state's attorney. Question 1. Whether this board can pass a resolution which is binding on the board to be seated 12-1-10. The answer, no. This resolution is procedural. It merely establishes a format for drafting a proposed apportion plan for consideration by the county board. Question 2, whether appointments to the proposed commission made by this board would be binding on the board to be seated 12-1-10. The answer is no. The 2010-11 county board can repeal or alter the entire resolution. And finally, question 12, would the membership of the commission be voted again at the beginning of the next board's term as the board's committee memberships are? As the resolution is written, these appointments would continue. Nothing could prevent the 2010-2011 board from altering or amending the resolution if it so wished to do. So in essence, what we're talking about is we don't have the authority, in essence, to make these changes. The 2010-2011 board can change anything we do when it comes to reapportionment, depending upon who has control of the board. So I say we can discuss this, we can add or subtract from it, but there's nothing binding about any of the things we're about to do when it comes to reapportionment, smaller boards, single districts. That's all moot come 2010 December. So I say discussion is good. I say we certainly should discuss it, but we really don't have control and cannot mandate to the next county board.
Mr. Langenheim.
In view of the cogent arguments just presented, I move that this motion be tabled until December.
Don't think
Point of order.
it's in order.
It's out of order.
I'm going to rule it out of order because this is, in effect, a study session, and it can go to the next full board meeting, and you could table it at that time. But I believe that it's out of order. The committee can challenge my ruling if they so wish. It's at your leisure.
For the record, I challenge that.
You have to make a motion to challenge the ruling of the chair?
I move to appeal the decision of the chair.
Do you have a second? Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Mr. Schmucker. The motion before the body is to challenge the ruling of the chair. I have ruled Mr. Langenheim's motion out of order since we are in I believe, a study session, and this matter properly goes to the full board. The full board at that session could, in fact, table it. I don't believe we can do so. A vote of yes overrules the chair. A vote of no upholds the chair. All those in favor of overruling the chair signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, the same?
No.
I think the noes have it. Did you have further things you wish to address, Mr. Langenheim? Did you have further things you wish to address?
No, not really.
Okay. Mr. Beckett?
I really, because I drafted this, I really want to wait and hear what everybody else has to say to respond to them, because I obviously put a good deal of thought in this. But I think it's important at the outset, and I know this will count as my first time for talking, that we get Mr. Ziegler up here, because I want the board members to know, I met with Mr. Ziegler. I went over this in detail with Mr. Ziegler. And, the basic premise, Mr. Kurtz, of what you brought is that any county board can change anything any county board does, and that's absolutely true. A long time ago, I brought before this board a resolution that we would not discriminate against people on the basis of sexual orientation, and it passed. And the new county board could change that. Do you know that? But they won't. You know why? Because it was a good idea. This is a good idea, and I don't think the new county board will change it. This is a good idea. I think that those of us who have stood for election, in my case, 3 times, you haven't stood once, but I'm still asking you to vote on this because you've had experience on the county board. I think the fact that all of us bring this diverse background into this point at this time in each of our respective careers makes us well equipped to decide whether or not a fair map is good. You actually are asking newly elected county board members. I know in our district there'll be 2 new county board members, and they're being asked to vote on a resolution about redistricting, and it'll be just like me when I was first on the board, and I just sort of went along with the party line, and Joan Dykes was sitting over there instead of sitting over here. So that's exactly what happened. She's absolutely correct. I heard her in public participation, and I was at a Democratic caucus meeting where they said, boom, we've got them. They're going to lose one. They're going to lose one. They're either going to lose Mr. Nod or Mr. Mosier. I don't remember, Mr. O'Connor or Ms. Dykstra. That was expressly said. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a different person now than I was back then. That stinks. That absolutely stinks. That isn't the way to draw maps. And this does something about it. But if I could, Mr. Chair, could I ask Mr. Ziegler to come forward?
Sure. If Mr. Ziegler wishes to address the committee.
Well, I want to ask him some questions. So I want to ask him sit back in the corner.
Ziegler from Olympia Drive. Thanks. Thanks, Steve.
Not tonight. Not tonight.
Okay. The first general question, it's the same one I asked you when we sat down with this. Is there anything illegal, unconstitutional, technically improper, I'm not asking about policy, about setting up a fair map commission like this?
Now, policy I won't answer, law I will. No, there's no reason, there's no legal impediment to the board adopting this resolution if it wishes to do so.
The other specific question I have for you is, it was pointed out that subparagraph 13F, which is claimed as some sort of killer. In fact, when I had this drafted, I specifically had the language that said who the folks were under Illinois law that would draw the map, right?
Yes.
And you told me that's redundant. You ought to just take it out, because if there isn't a map adopted by the county board by some process or another, that's what will happen.
Happens purely by operation of law. If the board does not adopt and file an apportionment resolution by the statutory deadline, then the matter goes to the Apportionment Commission. The members of the Apportionment Commission are named by state statute.
And so what 13F does, if I understood your advice, was it actually alerts the county board to what would happen if they didn't do a map. It really, if 13F wasn't there, it would happen anyway.
It would happen anyway. It's simply a recitation of what the state law is. Yes, it's a warning, more or less, inside your own proposed resolution. If the board fails to act, this is what will happen. The resolution doesn't make it happen. The state law will make it happen, but it's in there as an informational point, yes.
There was a suggestion about the way the resolution is drafted. The chair nominates members of the commission in the same fashion that the chair makes nominations. And so ultimately, the board controls the nomination process by either accepting or rejecting the nominees of the chair. Is that right?
I believe, according to your current rules, that would be correct, yes.
Okay. So in other words, if in fact the chair sought to stack, to use a bad phrase, to stack the commission, the only way that could happen would be with the consent of the county board.
Well, that's a political question,
well, I understand,
a political conclusion.
The vote, it would require a majority vote of the county board.
The way it's currently written, it would be as with other appointments. My memory is that your appointments are all done by majority vote of the board.
So those are only questions I have, Mr. Betts, and I guess I'd like to reserve my time to comment on other things after I hear, if you'll let me talk again.
Mr. James.
On item 8 that Mr. Kurtz spoke about, everyone probably knows that I'm one that I like to have a little bit more time to look at things, and if there's money involved, I'm definitely probably going to vote no. But in this case, Diane and I, because I've been sort of helping Diane wing along, if you can believe that. But what I was getting at is what Mr. Beckett said, even when I got on this board, and if we keep putting things off, even though we can move forward on this and vote on it, if the next board chooses to do what they want to do, let them do it. But we've got this ball rolling. We've got a lot of time invested in it, a lot of thoughts invested in it. And if I was to be a newly board appointee or elected and came onto this board, it would be hard for me, because I'd be sitting there like Carol Ammons did at first and like Diane does now. They're totally in the dark and lost. So I say let's just keep moving forward with it. Let's get it where we need to have it. And then if the next board comes along and says, well, geez, what were these guys thinking? Let them rule the way they want to rule. That'll be their choice. But to stop the process because we want to give a board that's going to be coming forth, to me, just doesn't make sense.
Mr. Nudo.
Yes, thank you. Steve? Is Steve still available? I'd just like a follow-up to Mr. Beckett's, just to make sure that everybody understands questions 1 and 2 apply to all resolutions in this place. It is not, all of the things that we put into play are non-binding to the next group. So there's nothing magic about the statement Mr. Kurtz made. It applies to everything that we do. The real question is here, I'm sorry, that was a question.
What was the question?
Do I have to restate?
No, it seemed like a
Question form,
rhetorical
or do I-
question to
Steve, did you
me.
get the gist of what I was asking?
I got the gist of it, but it's up to you.
Again, I treated it as a rhetorical question. Are you asking?
Yes, I asked Mr. Ziegler to
So what
answer.
you are actually asking is...
Right. If you want me to restate it so that
Can the
you
next
can
board
understand it,
undo
Tom.
this board's actions?
Tom, if you want me to understate it so you can understand it, is it true that all resolutions, ordinances that we create are non-binding to the next group?
Not all of them. Not all of them are.
Not every one, but this is a procedural ordinance or resolution. There's nothing that prohibits any subsequent board from changing basically any procedural ordinance.
Now, no other questions for you, but thank you. The question is, why now? Why not wait? The question really is about planning, because we have the ability to put together the structure by which to work and hit the ground running when that census hits, so that we have time to create not one, if it fails, not two, but three before the nuclear option hits, which is state law. So we're not saying today we're going to create the map based on no information that we have in advance of what the census is going to provide. We're saying we've got the structure that we want to put in place and allow the chair to put forth, like we did with the nursing home, qualified people in different categories to assist in transparency. Here's what really bothers me about the opposition to this. And I've heard it, I've seen it in the paper, I've heard people say it. You want to go back to going and drawing the maps in a back room. Is that what you want? You want to stick with gerrymandering? Do you want to stick with non-transparency? Do you want to stick with the ability to have the elected select the voters? That's what you're doing. Or do you want citizens, and I trust my chairman before the next chairman comes up, because he did a wonderful job in the nursing home in selecting those people, that he would be fair. If anybody's given anything up, it's the Republicans right here that says, hey, we'll have it done in this ordinance by December 1st. So Mr. Weibel gets to select it. Do I trust him? Yes. It's a start. It's a start. If there's ways that we can improve it, like Mr. Kurtz brought up students and urban citizens, one of the things that Steve wrote brilliantly in this is that one person can represent more than one characteristic or a definition of this group. You could have a minority map planner, right? So the point is, where are we going? Are we going to go back to, and I hate to use the term, we want to go back to the backroom deals where we're going to draw the map based on incumbency and party policy, or are we going to let citizens draw a map that we can vote on, and we have 3 opportunities to do it? It's pretty simple. It really is. And I really want to have every board member commit to that publicly. Which do you prefer? Tell your voting public, your constituents, which you prefer. That's all I would ask. And let this come out. Thank you.
Mr. Smucker?
I have a question for Mr. Ziegler as well. If you come to the microphone. Very popular tonight. What would happen? My understanding of this is essentially any board member could come in March of 2011 to the board with a map and ask for a vote on that map. And if that vote were to obtain a majority, what essentially would happen to the process that's laid out here?
Procedurally, you could have any board member come with a motion to approve an apportionment plan that has nothing whatsoever to do with this ordinance. It would effectively be bringing a motion to amend or repeal this ordinance, depending on exactly what it proposed. And there's nothing that procedurally right now prevents a board member from bringing an alternate plan completely separate from a plan by an apportionment commission.
So any member, essentially any member could bring a map, several members could bring maps, all of them could be discussed, and if one were to obtain a majority, then essentially that would be the map.
Theoretically, it's what you're actually asking about is a procedural question, so it's going to depend a great deal on what your procedural rules are at the time. But yes, it is theoretically possible, more than theoretically possible, depending on how the procedural rules are written.
Given the current rules right now, and the proposal we have in front of us.
Mm-hmm. It's possible to do it.
That would be possible to do that.
It's possible to do it. Now, the exact procedure for doing it is, I don't want to say open to debate exactly, but it would have to follow a fairly specific formula and get approval, obviously, of the county board. But yes, it is theoretically possible.
I mean, that's typically how this has been done in the past, is that a member, I'm new on the board, so I'm just trying to clarify. A member brings forth a map, and the map is...
Well, basically, about all I can say about that is that there has to be a proposal brought before the board somehow, whether it's a proposal from a redistricting commission, whether it's a proposal from an individual board member, whether it's a proposal from these things, I think, as we all know, have developed in various places.
Wouldn't it always have to just be a proposal from a single board member?
There would always, well, no, it doesn't have to be. It could come from a committee of the board. It could be something developed by policy or by some other committee. The basic bottom line is a measure must eventually be placed before this board in the same manner as any other measure to adopt a resolution or an ordinance, and either be voted up or voted down. And of course, we've already gone through the consequence of ultimately not adopting one of any type at all.
All right, well, thank you.
And procedurally, it's a motion to substitute. You could do it that way, or you could bring it directly to committee.
Why would it be a motion to substitute?
Let's say you had a map that was produced by this commission. Someone could say, I move to substitute the following map.
But if you were to bring a map before this commission even produced a map, wouldn't you just be able to propose it?
You'd get it on the agenda.
And then
you could
in other words, it doesn't need to be a motion to substitute. It could
you could do it that way. You could put it on the agenda and have an up and down vote.
And then I just would like to second one thing that Mr. Kurtz said, that I don't think it's appropriate to have, we don't have a long, what I would call a lame duck period on this board. It's very short, right? It's just a couple of weeks. But having this committee appointed during that very tight period doesn't strike me as appropriate. So I'll make a motion to change the word November in section 8 to January 2011. Actually, November, 2010 to January, 2011. And I can speak very briefly to that. I mean, this has been debated. We've heard from Al.
We need a second on that motion.
I move to second that motion.
We've heard from Al, and we've heard from both the Als, and they've both been very eloquent on this point. I simply believe it's inappropriate to have a lame duck board make one of the most important, decisions going forward of what the next board is going to do. It eclipses the democratic process. It eclipses the rights of the voters who've just elected new people to be on the board. And so I simply think it's inappropriate. And I ask that you support this, and I think that will make the process a lot fairer.
Discussion on the amendment now. That's what we're discussing is the amendment. Do you wish to address the amendment? Mr. Richards.
I'd like to second Mr. Smucker, literally and figuratively. We've heard that board members a quarter of their way through the term might be confused to accurately vote on a new map. I don't think that that's consistent with the Illinois Constitution. 2-year terms, I think it's expected people are ready to represent their constituents' interests from the first day. This should be done by people who have been elected and are sitting on the board. While we've certainly heard it's not illegal to have this done in November, I certainly think it would make for a much better process if it is done sometime after the new board is seated, that the new board should do it.
Further discussion on the amendment? Barbara, on the amendment?
I would just point out that perhaps while this is in fact a very important item, which the county board does only once every 10 years, the fact is it's a lame duck county board that approves every budget, which is, in my judgment, significant and something that has to happen every year. And every other year, it's a lame duck county board that approves the budget for the next year.
Further discussion on the amendment? We will have a roll call on probably everything tonight. The amendment is to change the date in Section 8 from November 2010 to January of 2011. Yes or no? Call the roll.
Ammons? Anderson? Beckett?
No.
Benzel?
No.
Betts?
Yes.
Coert?
Yes.
Dennitz?
No.
Gladney?
Yes.
James?
No.
Jay?
No.
Jones?
No.
Knott?
No.
Kurtz?
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes.
McGinty?
No.
Michaels?
No.
Mosier? Nudo?
No.
O'Connor?
No.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
No.
Sapp?
No.
Schrader?
No.
Smucker?
Yes.
Weibel?
Yes.
Wysocki?
No.
Motion fails. Mr. Knott, now we're back to the main motion.
Yes, I wanted to speak on the main motion, and a lot of what I've heard tonight is a lot of this is like a self-evaluation process. In a lot of ways, if your employer was doing an annual review of yourself, it's always tough at times to perhaps assess yourself and ask the honest question about your performance over, in this case, the last 10 years. I think this is much in that way. It's really asking in this resolution, we're going to have to take a tough look at ourselves, but this provides the opportunity for that outside point of view on this particular function. It's something I think the public would overwhelmingly support. I know earlier in the hearing tonight we talked about having public input. Mr. Beckett very skillfully crafted that within this resolution, that there is a required set of hearings that would have to go with any particular map before it was drawn. So I guess I urge us to think outside the box. I know it's tough to put our own self-interest away when thinking of such a resolution, but drawing that map is the most, self-serving act that a board does in a 10-year period of time. This puts that task within another group's hands. Ultimately, we still retain the authority. Just as Mr. Smucker indicated, I guess you could bring a substitute map that night. I think that would completely thwart the public will if this were adopted, but you could do that. I think this is a unique opportunity for Champaign County to be a leader. There's been a lot of talk at the state level to try to do a similar thing. Ours is what's allowed as a hybrid under current state law. If state law was different, I would probably have our resolution drawn slightly differently, but it's not. It doesn't allow it at this time. This allows Champaign County to be a leader in this area. And I think if we would park our own self-interest at the door and really look at this resolution, you'd have an opportunity to make an impact in the next 10 years, even if we're all gone. I mean, you're right. That map, I think Carol mentioned earlier tonight, or somebody, the map really does play an impact on many decisions that come down the road over the 10-year period of time. And it does matter who draw it. Republicans gerrymandered one 20 years ago, and the Democrats did 10 years ago. Okay, the score is 1-1. why don't we set that aside and say, here's an opportunity to change it, you know? And whether it's, I think, you know, arguing if it's now or 3 months from now, I think what it does now is it provides an opportunity for some lame ducks that are getting off the board that don't have the self-interest at all to say, you know, I've got 10 years of experience and I think there's a better way. This is that better way, and I guess I would encourage my colleagues to seriously consider to adopt it tonight.
Mr. Gladney.
I guess this is the night where I'm hearing conflicting things. Maybe it's me. But on the one hand, I'm hearing that we must do this now. And we must have the vote on this during this term of the board, because there'll be fresh faces starting in December of this year, and they'll be wet behind the ears, and you can't expect them to think for themselves, and they'll just toe the party line, or they'll whatever. So I'm hearing that. On the other hand, I'm hearing, oh, well, you know, nobody's bound to this. The 2010-2012 board is not bound to this. If they want to come in and change it, well, they can do that. So which is it? Are they wet behind the ears, not able to make a decision on this, and not going to get up to speed in time? Or are they going to be well-versed enough in this particular subject matter to decide to change it or throw it away or whatever? I mean, I think I'm hearing, like I said, I'm hearing conflicting things here. I mean, we're going to have at least 4 new people on this board in December, perhaps more. And another thing, I have a question for Mr. Ziegler, if he wouldn't mind coming up to the podium. So I have a question. If, let's say, a political party wanted to submit a map, as the Green Party did 10 years ago, would they be able to do that under this particular resolution? Would they be prohibited from doing that? Or if they were, would this have to be augmented in some way?
No political party in and of itself can submit anything to the board. It takes a member of the board or a committee of the board or a procedure of the board to bring it. In other words, somebody could not come from any existing political party simply come in and say, I insist that the board consider this map.
Well, they couldn't present it to the public.
I'm sorry?
So a political party could not present a map to the public, or they couldn't, you know.
A political party, a interest group,
So it would just be board
anybody
members.
can, anybody.
It would just be board members.
Well,
because I guess I'm just sort of piggybacking on what Mr. Smucker asked earlier about the availability for people to submit a map. I believe his question was about if a board member, you know, let's say in 2011 had a map that they had drawn up, they could bring it to the board.
They could bring, it's probably easiest to refer to it as the map. For me, it's an ordinance or a resolution to adopt an apportionment plan. There's more to the plan than just the map.
Does this allow for that currently?
A board member could put a proposal before the board for an alternate plan, a plan that had nothing to do with the work of an apportionment or reapportionment commission, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. I guess my concern with that being actually a viable possibility or something that would be allowed, like let's say sometime next year, is one thing we're hearing about why this must occur is transparency. You know, take it out of a back room, you know, put it out there in the open. I therefore cannot see how that's, you know, Mr. Smucker's idea of or a scenario of a board member coming up with a map or a proposal would be viewed very openly. I have no idea. And I also know that when we appoint committees, we tend to treat while they're working as committees anyway, we tend, as we should, to show high respect to those committees. And I can see arguments being made about don't undermine that committee's work. You know, this committee was appointed to do, you know, this job, allow that committee to do it. So I think Mr. Smucker's question from earlier was very valid, and I don't know how viable that would be come next year when this is all going on. So, thank you.
Ms. Michaels.
First, I'd like to tell my desk mate that the light has been on many nights late. I probably have more highlighting and notes on the side of my items here. But honestly, I tend to look at this as rather refreshing. as a new board member. I think that trying to find the diversification, to draw the map and try to be a little more fair about things, I find it very interesting. And I also think that, the days and the times have changed between being a donkey and a elephant. I think we all need to work together. I think this is a good way to do it. And I think it's pretty simple reading, actually, compared to some of the other documents we've had to read.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to remind everybody, I know I'm one of the older people here, that the last fair map was drawn by the Republicans. And the proof is in the pudding, because we drew the map and the Democrats won, so it had to be fair. I think to get to what seems to be dragging us down for a moment here is we're board members, and we have some responsibilities, and we need to fulfill those responsibilities. We don't need to push it off onto the next folks if this is really our idea, and if it's a good thing. We need to move ahead, and when it gets to them, if they think it's not a good thing, they can change it. But it doesn't mean that we can't do it now. In fact, we should do it now if this is what we really think we ought to be doing. And I honestly believe that the public wants us to do something. I don't know exactly what that is, but I know they want us to do something. Thank you.
Mr. McGinty?
Great discussion. This is what Greg and I had in mind, again, years ago, to just bring this stuff up so that we can at least discuss it. No matter what side you land on regarding this resolution, I'm supportive of a redistricting commission, primarily because I believe that though it's impossible to take 100% of the politics out of it, this would take the great majority of that equation out of it. I'm a geek, so I like logical things. I like to put facts behind things, and I think that a redistricting commission accomplishes that as much as it can. I'm not naive enough to not understand how this game works. I've been a political consultant for people for years, working with big organizations, how this whole political game works. I want to take, especially at this level, especially in this county, the politics out of it as much as possible. I'm on the majority side. I have a great district right now. I'm, happy because I've run less hard every time to get elected because I knew what the numbers were going in. Well, that just isn't right. I could sit there and be safe about it. I might want to run again. I don't know. But I'm willing to stand up for what I think is right now. I've thought about this the entire time I've been on the board. This is no surprise. This is one of the big issues. Why is the county board so big? Why are the districts drawn like they are? I haven't not thought about this. Thought about that the entire time, and that's why I fall on this decision to support this redistricting commission rather easily.
Chair Weibel.
I'd like to make an amendment. Actually, it's going to be a lengthy one, so bear with me. I move that on item 11B, the last sentence be dropped. The sentence starts with, if the size of an ideal equal election district, et cetera, goes to the end of the paragraph. I'd like to have that removed. Moving on to item C. The last sentence there, which begins with, if the ideal population of a district is 22,222, et cetera, to the end of the paragraph, a long sentence. Item D, halfway down through the paragraph, starting with, thus, if the ideal population of election district, et cetera, I believe actually there's, to the end of the paragraph, I believe that's actually two sentences to be removed. And item E, everything removed except for the first sentence.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Langenheim. Mr. Weibel, speak to your motion.
The main reason for this is our legal counsel recommends that we do this. If you look at the questionnaires that Mr. Ziegler answered, number 3, the question was whether the resolution should include examples of what would be acceptable formulas for a number of people in each district. His answer is the resolution should not contain examples or criteria that are contrary to or in conflict with the standards and requirements of the statute. The statute specifies that each district shall be equal in population to each other district. I agree with that entirely. Furthermore, this is all clutter, and it can be misleading. If somebody reads this and thinks that, they think that, for example, under B, the deviation example is 444, they think that is acceptable to have it 444 or less. No, it should be as equal as possible. So I think all that should be removed and make it simple. I mean, why do you have to make it complicated?
Mr. Beckett?
Okay, these aren't standards. That's an example. These aren't standards. That's an example. Every map that the commission would receive would be subjected to the same statistical testing. Each test, ideal equal district population, deviation, mean deviation, overall range, and smallest majority measurement. That's what paragraph F says. This isn't saying 2%. This isn't saying 444. These are just examples to show you how the formulas work, how the measurements occur. They make very clear to the commission as it sits how the tests are going to be done. These are identical to the statistical standards that are in the Iowa Fair Map Redistricting Commission. Identical. They're absolutely identical. There's no chicanery, there's no trickery. This isn't saying that this deviation must be met. What it does is if there are 10 maps, you can look at all 10 maps and look at each of these statistical standards and be able to compare map 1 to map 10 to map 7 to map 5 and see, are we really getting equal distribution? How do the maps compare to each other? And so the thought that somehow this is misleading or I'm not exactly sure what the objection to it is. It illustrates why statistics make a difference in trying to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about with a map.
I'm not saying that statistics are not part of it and should not be. In fact, they should be. I agree with you. That's why I left those parts in. I'm just saying the examples should not be there because our legal counsel says they should not be. And then Mr. Ziegler could respond why.
He didn't say that. He didn't say that.
He says the resolution should not contain examples, period. It's right here, Mr. Beckett. I'm sorry I have the floor. Board member's question says the resolution should not contain examples or criteria that are contrary to or in conflict with standards or requirements of the statute. Mr. Ziegler, could you agree with what you just, is that true or not? Am I reading your answer?
You're reading my answer, and I assume all of the board members have a copy of the answer, and I will be very clear. I will not get into the middle of a political or procedural discussion, only a legal one.
I understand that, but I am reading your answer, correct?
You have read a portion of that answer, yes.
Well, the second half is the statute specified each district shall be equal in population to each other district.
That's correct. That's
So
the
your final
requirement of the statute, that population shall be equal shall be equal in population to each other district, yes.
Thank you.
I did not offer the opinion that anything contained in the current proposed resolution is improper or illegal, however.
I did not say that.
Would you stay there, Mr. Ziegler?
We're going to address the motion on the floor, which is the motion by Mr. Weibel. That's the correct procedure, which is to delete those elements. That's what we're going to talk about. Then you can go back to the other stuff. Are you discussing the motion that's on the floor, Ms. Anderson?
I would support Chair Weibel in removing that. I think that if that is legal, that if we do adopt this commission, that information could be given to that commission as they do their work. But I don't think it's necessary in considering this whole resolution.
Mr. Rosales.
Let's do a roll call.
I'm going to do a roll call and everything because I know everyone's divided tonight, so you don't have to request roll calls. We're just going to do them. Other comments on the amendment? Okay. I'm going to make one comment on the amendment. In some respects, it's neither here nor there. One of the goals of this plan, I think, is to try to depoliticize it. Where the politics come in is the deviation. That's, if you say we're going to allow deviation of whatever percent, that's when you get into the ability to draw people out of their house into a different district, etc. It's the deviation where the game is played. So you need to be aware. As one who drew the last map, I can tell you that's how you do it, is using the deviation. That is the most critical thing you're going to do. The up and down vote on this doesn't much matter because the state law does permit a certain amount of deviation. But beware, that's where the devil is in that deviation. Mr. Kurtz.
Well, it seems that some of my suggestions are valid. I didn't say I was against this ordinance. I brought up a few comments, additions and subtractions that I thought would perhaps make it fairer, and certainly this amendment is part of exactly what I said about deviation. Well, I believe the deviation percentage variance should be no more than 50 citizens. The map can be drawn with much less deviation than stated in Section 11C. Now, the point being is that if we want it to be a fair map and we want it to be depoliticized, we shouldn't have any variance. In this case, we're just making a variance for no special reason. The statute says it has to be equal number of people, of citizens in each district. So my point is taken, and obviously it has struck a chord, but it doesn't say that I'm against this resolution. I was just trying to improve it or to make some changes that would make it a little bit fairer so that both political parties have an equal standing. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready for the roll call? Mr. Nudo?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Steve said. I'm comfortable with this deviation, and I think, Tom, the offset to your comment and to Mr. Kurtz's comment is that we have written in here that you cannot use previous voting records or patterns. So if it's 50, if it's a deviation of whatever this is written down here, the key thing is that these map drawers in this committee cannot go back and use previous voting patterns. And that's written into the resolution.
Bless you, my son.
Thank you. And you think I'm naive. You think I'm naive, but that is the way it should be, because we're going to have hold them dear to that if we're going to try and make this work. That is the key area. That's the key thing, that we cannot use previous voting patterns to draw the map. Compact, contiguous, no previous use of voting patterns.
As I said, bless you, my son. That being said, we're going to vote on the amendment by Mr. Weibel. A yes vote adopts the amendment, and no vote defeats it. Call the roll.
Ammons.
It's the Weibel amendment to delete the references to specific numbers. Is that a yes? Okay.
Anderson. Yes. Beckett.
No.
Benzel. No. Betts.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
Dennett.
No.
Gladney.
Yes.
James.
No.
Jay.
No.
Jones. No. Knott. No. Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
McGinty.
No.
Michaels.
No.
Nudo. O'Connor.
No.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
No.
Sapp.
No.
Schrader.
No.
Smucker.
Yes.
Weibel.
Yes.
Wysocki.
No.
The motion is defeated. We are back to the main motion, which is the whole thing. It's not been, no amendments have been made that are successful at this point. So we can speak to the motion. Let's see who's, Mr. Langenheim, then Mr. Beckett.
I'm up?
Yep.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to comment on the reiterated statement that new members of the board are naive and uninformed. They do not arrive on the board in the way that Dorothy arrived in Oz.
Thank you.
First of all, they're the result, their candidacy is the result of either an inborn desire to be on, their own desire to be on the board, or the fact that they were recruited to be on the board. And in the process, they learned a good deal about the board. Many, if not most of them, attend board meetings. Many, if not most of them, interview members of the existing board and members of the staff and so on. So these people are not blind and dumb in the marketplace. Also, there's a concern about compact districts. I think if you look at the present map of districts, you will find that all of them are very nearly rectangular, and they all of them do not have exceedingly elongate, snaky patterns. They're not gerrymandered in the sense of the original meaning of the word gerrymander, which compared them to the shape of a dragon or a snake. If you want to make compact districts, you can write into the ordinance of establishing districts a ratio of area to boundary length, and that would require an approach to a cube. You can't do a circular district because you can't fill the entire area of the district with circles, but you can do it with cubes or near cubes. You can do that mathematically if you want to. I don't think you do, but that's neither here nor there. Now, the notion that our current districting pattern was brought into play by a group of foul conspirators meeting in private in a deep, dank dungeon somewhere and springing it out on the populace is belied by the fact that the balance of power in this board rather closely parallels the average result of statewide and countywide or countywide, statewide, and nationwide elections. In other words, the balance between partisans or voters, people who vote Democratic or vote Republican, is about the same as the balance in constituency in this board. So we're really not dealing with a major, horrendous problem. And finally, this whole thing is sort of like the Children's Crusade, because the county board chairman is going to appoint those at-large members, and who's to say what's going to influence a future county board chairman or any county board chairman when he appoints those people? He's going to appoint people who think they'll do the good job, and he will think they're going to do the good job because they're going to do it the way he'd do it. So being a human organization, it's not immune from human foibles and defects.
Mr. Beckett.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to ask Mr. Nudo to accept this as a friendly amendment. Appreciate Mr. Kurtz's comments. He is absolutely correct. He did have positive suggestions, and I recognize them. After business and commercial interests, I want to add urban citizens, comma, college and junior college students, comma.
Did you add labor?
And the other one was, you said labor, did you not?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Organized labor. All right? Thank you. You bet. Now, Mr. Langenheim just said that there wasn't any deep, dark secrets, backdoor meetings, etc. I can't even remember where we met, but I do remember this. I was told we're going to keep control of the board. We're going to do in somebody in District 4. I don't know that you were specifically targeted, but you ended up, Ms. Dykes. We were told, look at these districts. They're 56, 57% Democratic. And that's great for everybody except District 5. Remember, Lorraine? District 5 had been much heavier Democratic, and it was losing Democratic strength. And so we had to bargain because the Democratic representatives from District 5 were understandably upset, and they wanted help in the next campaign. That meant financial help. Guess what? They got it. They got it. It was a backroom deal. And we're talking about these new board members. I saw an email that was sent out, and every Democratic candidate in the Democratic primary had to write in blood in their email, "We will support the Democratic plan. We will support the Democratic plan." That's what this is about. All these Democratic votes are, it's our map. It's our right. We get to do it. I don't blame you. If I felt the way you did, I suppose that's exactly the way I would. But don't give me this stuff about they're not wet behind the ears. They already had to promise you. They had to promise the Democrats that they were going to follow the Democratic map. Mr. Smucker, any citizen can bring a map to this commission. Any party can bring a map to this commission. You are absolutely correct the county board can completely ignore this commission. But you know what? It's in the light of day. It's transparent. And everybody will know that Sam Smucker thumbed his nose at the commission, if it was you, and I'm just using you hypothetically.
You can use my name.
Ralph Langenheim would thumb his nose
In fact, if the commission will stand up, I'm ready.
Right. That's the beauty of it. The beauty of it is it's in public. There are meetings. The maps are debated. They aren't debated in the Democratic caucus where the decision is ultimately made if the Democrats are in control, or in the Republican caucus. And by the way, in 1992, it was 21-6, Mr. J. Republicans to Democrats.
I said the last one.
Yeah, but
The last one.
Yeah, but you do a damn good map. You do a better map than the Democrats did. They only went 16-11. You do a much better map. And, you know, the public is seeing this, and they see right through it, you know? I mean, they truly, truly do. The legislatures of several states have gone to this. I agree, we're unique. I know of no county in the United States that is attempting this procedure. I got a hold of NACO and asked them for sample legislation. They had none. None. The National Association of Counties had none. They now have it because I've sent them this. Is it such a terrible idea to do this in the open, in public, where everybody can see what you're doing, where everybody can see the debate among maps, and have that commission bring forward to this board a map to vote up or down on? Is that so horrible? I submit it's fair, and that's why we have these fair map proposals statewide, and why it's good not only for Champaign County, it's good for every county in the state of Illinois. And I find it so hard to believe that my Democratic colleagues that I work with, and we debate and fight and argue all the time, and you're so open and understanding about equality and fairness in politics, why you can't just come on board and accept a fair map proposal. Thank you.
Mr. Smucker, then Mr. James.
Well, I'd like to say that we actually already have a fair and open system for creating maps. We do. We bring, my understanding is, maps are brought to the county board in exactly the same way that your resolution was brought. It's developed. They're developed. Well, you bring resolutions one at a time, right? So resolutions come forward, you can debate them, you can put them forward, they're discussed, they're voted up or down, they can be amended, all of those things. And so the process of developing a map is no different than any other process that this board goes through. Now, I can't speak to the situation you were in 10 years ago. And believe me, I'm sorry that at that moment you did not speak up and say, this is wrong, we can't do this. This is inappropriate, you know, we're drawing a map, it's inappropriate to talk like this, okay? I can tell you that I'm not going to be in that room and be silent if that sort of thing happens. I believe we have a fair process. But I also believe that, like anything, the fairness of the process is going to depend on the people who are involved in it. And I promise to bring fairness to that process. I think that the best system that we've figured out in this country is when you elect representatives to make law, make resolutions, make proposals, debate them in public, and go forward with them. The Illinois statute already provides a lot of the suggestions that are in your resolution. This system already exists. This resolution circumvents it. It does not provide a fair system. It circumvents a fair system. So that is why I'm opposed to this resolution. I think, you know, I just disagree the idea that somehow this committee that's going to be not elected, but selected, is somehow the even-handed committee. The even-handed committee is the will of the voters. It always has been in this country. And so that's why I support the system that we have. And you're right, whether it's been the Republicans or the Democrats who had majorities who could vote maps in, the goodness of those maps relies on the fairness of those people. It relies on the moral fortitude, the moral qualities of those people, and their intentions. And if their intentions are rotten, then God help us all, that's the kind of board we're going to have. It's going to be antagonistic and it's going to be rotten. And if their intentions are fair and if their intentions are true, then you're going to have a fair situation, a fair map, and you're going to have a better relationship on this board in the long run, and you're going to be able to get things done. So that's my piece on it. I'm committed. I do not think this is the right process, but I am committed to a fair process. I am not interested in gerrymandering. I lived in Louis Gutierrez's district in Chicago. If anybody's ever looked at Louis Gutierrez's district in Chicago, that's it right there. I lived in that district. Okay? That's ridiculous. There's no point and there's no call for that in Champaign County, and there's absolutely no reason why. I'm certainly not going to be a part of any process that draws that map, draws that kind of, district. So thank you.
Mr. James, then Ms. Anderson.
Well, I'm going to have to speak, and I got to apologize to Diane. I guess I'm the only one in here that's naive. I came to this board thinking that common sense would prevail, and it's a learning curve. I don't know of anybody in my lifetime that I've ever met that has walked into a job or a board or a commission and knew off the top of their head what the heck they were doing. And I sat here and I came on here with good intentions. Yes, I vote party lines. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but it's because I didn't know any better. And like Steve said, he didn't know any better when he first came on board. Then you start looking at it. And when we talk about being fair, I really hope that we are, but I think we all, and I've spoke with several in this room, at times we are predisposed to certain things. If we were so grand, and when we sit here and puff all our fluffery, as Joe Phoebus told me, why is it that when people out there in the public look at us, at times, and Steve, forgive me for this, politicians are ranked lower than lawyers and attorneys. So I just think sometimes when we all sit here and talk that, let's be fair. Let's work together. It's not us. It's not for the betterment of Stan James or Rosales or Matt Gladney. It's for the people we serve. And I think we honestly at times forget that. I really do. And this is a tool. It's something that's been looked at. And if we have no tools and everybody goes off, well, I want this, I want that, we have no order. And we got to go somewhere, and we got to start somewhere. And I think this is basically fair. Do I agree with everything in it? Heck no. But I was married and I never agreed with my wife either. There you go. Steve got money.
Ms. Anderson.
Well, I just can't help but make a couple of comments, especially after Mr. James talking about people to get respect. On polls nationally, in groupings, nurses always come out on top. That wasn't what I just couldn't resist that. But I do want to make just a couple of comments. I think it was Mr. Knott said it's 1-to-1. Republicans drew it 10 years prior, and then the Democrats. I think the Democrats have only ever drawn one map in this county. It was always Republicans prior to that. And in spite of the Republicans drawing that map, when I ran in 2000, my district had been 3 Republican representatives for that decade. And then 3 of us were running that year because there was the 2 incumbents running, and then a 3rd person who had been appointed and had to run. And 2 of us were elected by a lot of hard work in a district that was rated 60% Republican. So it's possible, no matter who draws the map in those districts, that they might go other than what the people drawing the map might think. I probably will end up voting for this, But I think that I would like to defend Mr. Smucker and his offering, well, he may not be offering, but the possibility of offering a map. The commission, it sounds fair, but it all depends on the appointments, and it's possible that what they came up with might not look all that fair to us. And if somebody has a proposal that looks more fair, what's wrong with that? It's a democracy, and you should be able to have some choices. And I've never helped draw the map, but it sounds easy to think that there'll be all nice squares or rectangles. But I think we also know that there are things to consider, like not dividing precincts in half, and so it's not always. I think it could be contiguous and should be contiguous, but it may not look perfectly square or rectangular. Just those couple of comments. Thank you.
Ms. Ammons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask just a couple of questions to yourself. If this commission is put in place, is the commission subject to the same Open Meetings Act as we are?
I believe so, yes.
Will it be publicly vetted in this room?
I would assume so.
And the other one is, as with other appointments in the county, we have county board members. Even if the chair chooses a person that we largely disagree with, the county board chair still has the ultimate authority of the appointment.
That's correct.
And then my last comment would be that the various attempts to put input into this process is very partisan as it is. And so I do not believe, as with other commissions, since my coming to the board, as Mr. Stan said, somewhat in the dark, I do agree that people come in are somewhat in the dark because they don't understand the politics behind the politics of the very board that we sit on. And before, at the point of receiving this in my packet, unfortunately, the submission to this process was not given to us to say, here's my language for this process, or this shouldn't be in here, and so on and so forth. It was drawn by a couple of members who got together to do this. Lots of work, very appreciative. But once we received it, this is the draft language that we like to change. And because of partisanship, it's very difficult to take out certain things at this level. And I believe that the commission will be certainly subject to the same thing as with other commissions. And I'll just say, finally, for the time's sake, as Ms. Coward has to leave, this is an example of we can pass it now and put the committee of the whole together, and we'll just deal with the 10, 11 o'clock time frame that our meetings turn into. The commission that will be appointed has to and will have people's self-interest on those committees as we look at other commissions and committees in the county. So I'll just leave those comments at that.
Mr. Kurtz, then Mr. Schrader.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank Mr. Beckett and Mr. Nudo for that friendly amendment. I asked for one more, Mr. Beckett. The chair shall avoid appointing persons from groups and organizations that actively lobby the county board. I think that's fair, and I would like to make that as a friendly amendment.
Do they accept it as friendly? No. Okay.
I'll second it.
It's seconded.
How do you define that?
Would you? Can't define it. We're now on the amendment. There's an amendment that the chair should avoid, doesn't prohibit, avoid selecting folks that regularly lobby before the county board. Discussion on the amendment. Mr. Sepp. Mr. Benzel, excuse me.
That's all right.
It's getting late.
I've been thinking about that suggestion since he first brought it up. And while I agree with it, the concern I have is how do you define that? Where was Mr. Ziegler, not this Mr. Ziegler, the Mr. Ziegler from Olympian Drive that spoke to us. Is he a lobby? Or is he a concerned citizen? I don't know. So I've been struggling with that. How do you define that? Well, I certainly agree with the position. I have no idea how you define that. Which brings to lie to the second point that I was going to talk about was the friendly amendment done to the motion where we added organized labor on there. If you're going to talk about lobbies, there's no more frequent lobby to this board than organized labor approaching that podium. And quite honestly, I'd like to make a motion that we strike organized labor from that friendly amendment.
I think, point of order, I believe we already have an amendment on the floor.
There is an amendment on the floor. If we can speak to the amendment on the floor, Mr. Richards.
When it comes to defining these, why don't we start with some of the same special interests that stood up with the sponsors of this bill when this got put forward?
What's that mean? I don't understand.
I'm sure that if we wanted to name this, generally when you either lobby Washington or Springfield, it's considered to be when money's changing hands. So, a random person who goes to Springfield is not considered a lobbyist, but say certainly most anybody from a union and any number of other groups, their people have to register as lobbyists.
Mr. Kurtz.
What if we change it to shall avoid appointing persons from groups and organizations that do business with the county?
That's everybody.
That's already in place. That's conflict of interest stuff. It's already in place.
There's no second to that, so Mr. Langenheim.
Does this amendment mean that any citizen who has sent an email to any member of the county board asking them to vote one way or the other is forever forbidden from serving on this election board? I would address that question to our principal authority on the election board, Mr. Beckett.
Well, he's not the maker of the motion, so I think you should address it to the maker or the seconder of the motion.
Whatever.
I'm going to guess that you're referring to organized groups, but
what's organization?
Chamber of Commerce or Farm Bureau or any of those organizations.
What if a man and his wife sign it? Are they an organization?
It says avoid. There's no prohibition here.
I mean, this is.
Do we want to vote on the motion? Is there need for more discussion? Do you want a roll call?
Roll call.
Okay. This is the motion on the chair. It's an admonishment to the chair, which he can do regardless of what we say, to avoid appointing folks who regularly lobby before this board on issues. There's a yes and a no. Call the roll.
Ammons. No. Anderson.
No.
Beckett.
No.
Benzel.
No.
Betts.
Yes.
Coert. Oh, sorry, she's gone. Dennett.
No.
Gladney.
Yes.
James.
No.
Jay.
No.
Jones. Knott. Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
No.
McGinty.
No.
Michaels. Nudo. O'Connor.
No.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
No.
Sapp.
No.
Schrader.
No.
Smucker. Weibel.
No.
Wysocki.
Motion's defeated. We're back to the main motion. The next person up for speaking was Mr. Schrader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support this motion, or this resolution. I just want to make a point, too, about politics in general with this. When I was appointed, I didn't come up through a party apparatus. In fact, I'd never been to a Republican Party picnic until after I was elected, or to a Lincoln Day dinner. I was not part of the party apparatus. So when I look at things and I can see politics on both sides, I can see how things are played out, and as a citizen who wasn't part of the party apparatus, I get a little upset, shall I say it. Probably not like some of the meetings I've been at here lately, but I get a little upset because I think we're here to do, and I'm going to stand up on a soapbox, I think we're here to do the county's business and to do it with best of our abilities. We're not all blessed with the same abilities, but we do with what we can. So when the party bosses look at drawing the maps, and the Republicans did 20 years ago, the Democrats did 10 years ago, they look at party lines, but without any transparency. But when a commission like this can look at basically maps that are tight, compacted, and contiguous, and looking at population only, we all understand human nature. Someone's going to have a bent to one side of the party or anything. But I think this is going to help because of the transparency and the openness, bring this out, and it doesn't take away from the elected, us, the elected. And so I'm really in full support of this. And you're probably thinking, yeah, you're easy for you to say that because you're in the minority party over here. But I remember some of the party leaders years and years ago, before I was even on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And some of them didn't really particularly ingratiate me, to say things lightly, because of their strong politics. So I've seen it on the Republican side, and I can speak to that directly because that's where I've been. But once again, I think this is really going to open things up to where we as elected class are going to have the final say. We as elected are going to have the say on this, whether or not it's up or down. Thank you.
Mr. Knott.
Just a procedural question. On the original motion, was it Mr. Nudo or myself that seconded that?
You know, I've lost track.
Several screens ago, but. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Benzel.
Thank you. So I'd like to go back to my point that I made earlier. I have concern over the lobby issue that he talked about, which then would correlate directly to the reference in there to organized labor, who I think is probably our most frequent lobbyist group. And, I have some concern over that. But more importantly, the concern I have is, if we start naming organized labor, it seems like we're getting into specific groups now. And, so are we going to start making sure that we get somebody from the Pilots Association in here? And, I think it's getting too narrow for me. I don't want to start seeing us naming certain organizations for this. And so I'd like to make a motion that we strike organized labor from that amendment.
There's a motion on the table to strike organized labor. Discussion. Mr. Richards.
I agree.
Other discussion? I'm going to say it one more time. Discussion. Mr. Beckett.
Organized labor is really very, very, very broad. I think what you're talking about is giving the chair the greatest flexibility to think that he has, in this case, Mr. Weibel, that he has broad discretion in trying to have a diverse commission. I don't think it's got the negative connotation that Mr. Benzel suggests, and almost acting as if organized labor is some sort of evil, which it is not. No, I didn't. I didn't say you said that.
Mr. Langenheim.
An appropriate amendment to that amendment, which I'm not going to make, I'm not going to amend, but would be to add the Farm Bureau and the Chamber of Commerce.
Is there any further actual discussion? Yes, Mr. Nuda.
I just counted the number of types of interests that we're talking about here. We have 12 for 7 positions. So there is no guarantee that any one characteristic is going to be serving, a la, a student may not be on there. It may not be. It just is possible that the chair could recognize another group as being more important or less important. And as I said earlier, you can have combinations to represent this, but I agreed to a friendly amendment on the basis of the fact that I want transparency and full participation, and we're going to have to work through this ability for the chair working with this body to do the right thing. And if it isn't happening, you have the bully pulpit of the public and the press who happen to attend these things. So that's why I accepted it as a friendly amendment.
But the mover, which was Mr. Beckett, did not accept it. So that amendment he's trying to remove the labor. You didn't accept that.
I moved it in second. It was second.
Okay. But there is.
Nudo and I are still on the same page.
Okay, but you're not, yours is an amendment. There's nothing friendly or unfriendly about it. We're just treating it as an amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, because he's using the word friendly, and that's not what's before us. Are we ready to, any further discussion? I'm going to say it one more time, discussion. Now we're calling the roll on the amendment to remove organized labor as, Ms. Wysocki?
I just cannot resist making this analogy. When we put together the Land Resource Management Plan Steering Committee, we too had a diversity, or at least a range of positions, I'll use that word, as to who would be, or which interests needed to be most represented on that group. And it was a group of 18. We had, I believe, over 30 applicants. And again, it gave Mr. Weibel the flexibility to do the mixing and the matching to see how he could put together that particular group that met those characteristics. And it worked well. It really did. Mr. Weibel did a great job on that. And the committee as a whole was a good committee for that very reason. I see this as very similar to that. And, at some point, yeah, you've got to trust the human element involved in this. I have to believe that people who would put themselves out to serve on this kind of a committee, a first of its kind in the state of Illinois, folks, they're going to step up to the plate and they're going to perform as we, I think, all would anticipate they will. So I don't have any hesitation at all of maybe adding some groups, leaving some off, whatever. I just think we've got an adequate mixture of interests that can do what we want them to do.
Further discussion, Mr. Sapp.
Again, I just want to make sure that people understand that this vote isn't, again, against someone who is in a union. I'm looking more for characteristics. What characteristics does that person bring? They understand the computer. They can do analysis. They can study maps. They understand, how to look at population densities and things like that. Those are the characteristics I'm looking for. And if that person that has those characteristics happens to be in the union, that's great. I just think by adding that in there, we're adding in a group of the population versus a characteristic, and I don't want other groups to look at it and say, well, why did you add my group in there so that he looks specifically at me? So that's why my vote will be to remove that. Again, it's not against labor. If labor is involved, I think that's awesome, but I want more characteristics.
Further discussion, Mr. Gladney.
It's more of a comment. I get, earlier tonight, we seemed to not be able to define what constituted a group or a lobbyist or whomever, but now we're very, very clear of who organized labor is and what it is, and that they should be stricken from this document. So I just find that interesting.
Further discussion. Mr. O'Connor.
Stop me if this is irrelevant, Tom, but back when I was new on the board,
I haven't said anything yet.
Moraine would have been the only one that could swear to this. My only campaign plank was no Ho and Homer. I campaigned against that garbage dump out there. When it came for a vote, they tried to tell me that I had to abstain because of prior prejudice. and Lyle Shields stuck up for me, but they were dead serious. They weren't going to let me vote on the landfill issue because that was one of my campaign planks, and I've still got that stuck in my craw. So there's not really anything wrong with special interest, in my opinion.
Breathe it off.
All interests are special.
Again, I'm going to do it twice. Discussion. Call the roll. A yes vote is to remove organized labor. A no vote is to leave organized labor in.
Ammons. Anderson.
Right. Yes is to take them out,
This
right?
is a no vote leaves them in.
No.
Beckett.
No.
Benzel.
Yes.
Betts.
No.
Dennett.
Yes.
Gladney.
No.
James.
I'm thinking, no.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Not. Is that a no? Kurtz.
No.
Langenheim.
No.
McGinty.
No.
Michaels.
Yes.
Nudo.
No.
O'Connor.
Absolutely not.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
No.
Sapp.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Smucker. Weibel.
No.
Wysocki.
No.
The noes have it. We are back to the main motion, and the next person that I had up for speaking was Mr. Benzel.
I spoke.
You spoke?
You
Then,
defeated mine.
okay. Well, I want to give you your opportunity. Mr. Weibel.
Just a clarification on something Ms. Ammons said, sitting behind me. I do have the power to, I have the sole power to nominate people, but I don't have the power to appoint people. The appointment is done by the board by a vote. Just want to clarify that. But I am the person who has the sole power to nominate people for that position.
Mr. Smucker.
I actually have a question for Mr. Beckett about the resolution. I don't see a place, and maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be there, but a place that says, I assume that to forward a map from the committee to the board would take a majority vote of the commission? Okay, I don't see that anywhere in there. Is it?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No. Is it implied somewhere that I'm just missing it?
It basically indicates, find the section here. It should be the responsibility of the redistricting commission to adopt the Champaign County reapportionment map with less than districts in accordance. So it has to, and then it also has the power. I thought I had a thing in here about voting following.
I'm sorry, where was that at?
I'm looking, 7. And to decide all other matters of procedure regarding meetings, public hearings, supposing proposed electric district maps for public review and other rules of order. And so it follows the rules of order, which are the same as ours.
Okay. Is that, would that be other people's understanding that basically saying that? I just don't want to get in a situation where there's this discussion about, do we need 2/3 or how does it get forward or?
Mr. Weibel.
I think we need examples.
I think we need to conclude. Mr. Knott.
Well, in that spirit, I'll call the question.
Second.
Discussion on calling the question. Discussion on calling the question. Discussion on calling the question. All those in favor of calling the question. Do you need a roll call for this, folks? No. Sure? Okay. Raise your hand if you're in favor of calling the question. I think it's called. If you're opposed? Okay. I think it's called. And now we need to actually vote on the motion, the resolution. That I will do a roll call since yes.
And this motion will be to take it to the full board?
This motion takes it to the full board. We're a study session this evening. Call the roll.
Ammons. Yes. Anderson.
Yes.
Beckett.
Yes.
Benzel. No. Betts.
No.
Dennett. Gladney.
No.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Knott. Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
No.
McGinty.
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Nudo. O'Connor.
Yes.
Richards.
No.
Rosales.
Yes.
Sapp.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Smucker.
No.
Weibel.
No.
Wysocki.
Yes.
It is moved to go to the full board. We know what our arguments are at the full board. Maybe we can find a way, and I'm being very sincere about this, of perhaps the pros and cons designate two people to speak on their behalf so that we could condense the argument and have it done. No one can preclude it, but we might be able to concentrate the argument that we have on this issue. It's just a suggestion. Mr. Weibel will be chairing that meeting, and he will get the fun that I'm having this evening. The next matter is an ordinance establishing the number of county board members and establishing a single-member district. We had a discussion earlier during the session. People decided that they wanted to have another hearing. I would entertain a motion to, when we put this before the full board, just put it before the full board and table it at that time or defer it at that time because people had already said they wanted a hearing on this issue. Is that acceptable in general to the body? Mr. Beckett.
Why can't we make a motion to defer this? The problem is we don't have an action item about public hearings on the agenda.
I understand.
And so why can't we do a motion to defer item E2 to the next committee of the whole, and then you can either put something on the board agenda about public hearings so that we have that in advance of that. It just doesn't make sense to me to move this to the board when we're looking for input. I would think we would want the committee of the whole to have something they want to recommend to the full board instead of just passing this on as a placeholder.
Mr. Weibel.
I think the problem is that in order to have that, you have to bring it to the floor to defer it. So the best way to do is to not act on it. Because according to Robert's rules, everything in this meeting is preliminary. So if we just don't act on it, we can bring it up again.
Well, there's no motion on the floor. As long as there's no motion on the floor, seeing no motion, seeing no second, we move on to the next matter, which is the chair's report. And I'll be proud to say I don't have a report. Designation of items to be placed on county board consent agenda. I'm sure reapportionment has full consent. Most of the matters were unanimous with one exception, and that was the issue of the reapportionment issue. I think that was it. Excuse me? Before we adjourn this evening, I do want to thank the committee. This has been a difficult evening. I think everyone was behaving as superb county board members, asking good questions and getting some interesting answers. I appreciated the decorum of the committee. It is not always easy when you are partisan, and I am the one person who will admit I am very partisan, to conduct a meeting where you have an issue which you profoundly disagree with. You've done a great job tonight. You should be proud of the discussion we had tonight. It'll be fun in a couple of weeks. Thanks.